What's going on, guys? My name is Obi. I am giving this talk for some reason. So the logo that's on the screen right now, that's actually a company that I started with 5 other really talented guys. Keith, Dan, who owns Citadel Nutrition, if you guys are familiar with the gym you guys go to. Seth and Steven, and then Eric, who is our advisor, who is actually the main guy who most of this talk is based off of the principles that he's kind of taught much of the knowledgeable population on fitness. And yeah, so a lot of the principles that I kind of fleshed out in here are based off Eric, like I said, and we also implemented them into our app. And I made this like probably 2 hours ago, like I finished it 2 hours ago, so it's still kind of rough, but I guess my background, if you guys were at the first meeting, you know that I was the president of the Barbell Club last year. I graduated this past spring. I decided, hey, I don't want to actually work for anybody, so I didn't take the job that I got offered to work on this. This isn't pitching. I've been doing nutrition and fitness for probably like 5 years now. I did coaching, or nutrition, quote unquote coaching, in the Barbell Club for, I think, about 2 years for whoever asked. And I don't really have any like certifications in nutrition, so like I don't really call myself a coach. I'm just semi-knowledgeable on the subject because I have done it with a lot of people and kind of looked into it a fair amount. So like if you need to like, you know, if I need to like have some certification to give you information, then I don't have it, sorry. But yeah, and like I said, attribution, so a lot of the information you're gonna see in here comes from a lot of people who I look up to and idolize. Eric Helms, who I mentioned is our advisor for Fit Genie. Bob McDonald, Alan Aragon, Ian McCarthy, who's actually local, who's from Atlanta, and then Brad Schoenfeld. If you look up these guys, they have a lot of really, really good work. So, hopping right into it. Actually, first, I kind of like want some context, because we have like an assload of slides on this, and I don't want to keep you guys here forever, but it'll help me kind of direct the presentation. How many people like would consider themselves like kind of knowledgeable on nutrition? Sweet. How many people have like tracked calories, protein? Cool. So like almost everybody. All right, that works. Sick. So basic thing with nutrition is there's really 3 main goals that you can have: lean mass gain or bulking, fat loss or cutting, and then maintenance, which means you just want to maintain. For the most part, we're just going to touch on lean mass gain and fat loss. The same principles apply to maintenance, but there's not really much analysis and iteration that goes on with that because you're just keeping everything the same for the most part. And yeah, so with those 3 goals, you know, some people, they're like, oh, like, what are your goals? I want to gain mass and lose fat at the same time. For the most part, the way this presentation is going to be directed, you have to pick one. And I say that with an asterisk because there are some cases where you can lose body fat and gain lean mass at the same time. It's called body recomposition. But they're few and far between. It doesn't really apply to everyone. It applies in select few situations. And we won't touch on that during this talk. But, so the way that Eric Helms actually kind of structures nutrition and the way he's kind of taught me is to look at it in the form of a pyramid. And pretty much the way we like to look at it is that you want to build your base and actually focus on your base before you look at the top of the pyramid and try and get there. And by that I mean you have to focus on what's important. So without focusing on calories and energy balance, which is the base of the pyramid, it doesn't make sense to look at nutrient timing, supplements, weird protocols with timing of training and nutrition. That stuff does matter to a certain extent, but the most important thing, the overarching thing, is calories and energy balance. And as we go through this presentation, we're going to stack on top of this pyramid. So what is energy balance? Energy balance really is energy in versus energy out. So your calories consumed versus your calories expended. Basic principle, if you are consuming more calories than you're expending, you're going to gain weight. And likewise, if you're expending more calories than you're consuming, you're going to lose weight. So if we can all agree that that's like the baseline principles of nutrition, then we can base a lot of the advice that we give on those on that one main rule. So the first step is, and if you're taking notes, I'll make sure to post these slides or whatever. Excuse me. The first step is determining your maintenance calories. So no matter what your goal is, bulking, cutting, maintaining, you want to have a starting point to go from, and maintenance calories is that starting point. So essentially what maintenance calories means, that means the amount of calories that you consume that will make it so that you don't lose weight. And there is really there's several ways to determine your maintenance. The way I'm going to teach is based on these equations. So there's a hard way. The hard way we actually implemented into the app, and there's the easy way. It's just less math. So the hard way is based on an equation called the Nelson prediction equation, and the easy way is kind of a loose approximation. I won't get into too much detail, but you see RMR stands for resting metabolic rate, and then you scale that by an activity coefficient, and that gives you your maintenance calories. So I'm going to zoom through there. And this activity coefficient ranges, different people will tell you different ranges, but it's around 1.3 to 1.8, depending on how active you are. And the key thing, the reason I zoomed through all that is that that value may or may not be right. A lot of times people will say, okay, use this calculator, it's the greatest in the world, and then people plug in their maintenance and they're like, oh, like, that's not actually my maintenance. Like, I've been at these numbers for 2 weeks and I gained weight. What the hell happened? And the key take home that I'm going to kind of try and touch on during this entire talk is that the most important thing with tracking your nutrition is you are decreasing the size of your target or decreasing the size of your ballpark when it comes to the guesswork that's in dieting. And putting numbers to things kind of helps us make knowledgeable iterations on our week-to-week tweaks so that we make sure we're reaching our goal. So just like I said, if you're just freeballing it and not focusing on the base of the pyramid, which is calories and energy balance, and instead you're like, oh, I'm going to take this wild supplement, Rich Piana said, drink like 5 scoops of real food a day, and like that's what I'm going to do. If you're freeballing it, then the ballpark you're playing in, that target the target that you're playing in is huge. It's really hard to hit that center because it's not as narrow and focused. But if the target is smaller, then you have more of a focused plan of attack when it comes to reaching your goals. So what setting your initial targets does with calories, it shrinks that target, so it makes it easier to know what we're focusing in on. And the second step is determining your calories from your maintenance. So if you're cutting, then general rule of thumb is subtract 200 to 800 calories from your maintenance. Bulking, add 0 to 400 calories to your maintenance. Both are dependent, or where you are in that range for cutting, we'll touch on in the next slide, I think. And then for bulking, that's dependent on training experience, which I'm also going to touch on in the next slide. So for your cutting, basically the main thing that determines how big your deficit is the time frame that you want to spend cutting, and also, well, 2 things actually. The time frame that you want to spend cutting, your amount of lean body mass, how much fat you're holding on to. Reason being, people that are holding on to a little bit more lean body mass, they are able to lose weight at a quicker rate. And also adherence and preference. So for some people, they might not be able to handle as big of a deficit and they'll fall off quicker. And the big overarching thing is if you can't adhere to your diet, then what's the point? So you want to have a deficit that's easy to adhere to. And bulking, like I mentioned, is determined by training experience or FFMI. And what FFMI stands for, that's fat-free mass index. If you've heard of BMI, doctors use it all the time. It's kind of a trash system because it doesn't take into account lean body mass. So if you're someone like me who's like 215 pounds and 6'4", they're like, oh, you're overweight, and I'm like, sick. But FFMI takes into account lean body mass. And so those who are trying to gain weight, this slide will apply to you. The hard way to kind of determine training experience is you can use that equation up there. Pretty much it's your body weight in kilograms times 1 minus body fat percentage divided by your height in meters squared. And then if you fall in between any of those ranges, you can label yourself beginner, intermediate, or advanced. I don't know exactly, can't remember off the top of my head who came up with why those numbers represent beginner, intermediate, or advanced, but if you want me to, I can cite that and link it when I post the slides. And then the easy way is you just use how many years you've been training or in the gym or doing fitness. Generally, both kind of map to the same outcome. But from that, you'll be able to determine how much your surplus should be. And the big overarching thing from those two slides are that more advanced trainees require a lower surplus. And I don't have the slide here. And the reason for that is because when you're bulking, a lot of times you'll see people like to give shotgun advice that, oh, if you're trying to put on weight, just eat as much as you can, eat ice cream, eat pizza, eat 900 grams of protein a day, and the whole American perspective of more is better, it doesn't apply here. And the reason is because you can only gain lean body mass up to a certain amount when it comes to the calories you're consuming. So you only want to consume enough calories to permit muscle growth. And a lot of the advice I'm also giving you here, this comes with the assumption that we're all training semi-consistently and doing something fitness related. Because a key thing that Eric always likes to say is that nutrition is, or excuse me, let me not butcher this. Training is a stimulus that promotes muscle growth, and nutrition just allows it. So without proper training, this stuff is like bunk. He says that one thing he says is you can put a protein shake on a bench, but the bar's not going to move, you know. So you have to train in order for this to be optimal to improve body composition. So, quick example: if you are a 200-pound male, you're cutting, you're a student, which means you're probably moderately active, and you have a 12-week deadline. If we calculate your maintenance using that easy way, we'll see that maintenance of this guy comes out to 3,000 calories. So pretty simple math. You guys are smart. And then his starting calories, because he's cutting, we're going to put him at 400. I think I mentioned the range was between 200 and 800. He's got 12 weeks, so that he's got plenty of time. Doesn't need to be too aggressive. So we'll put him at 400, and his starting calories are 2,600. Pretty simple. But do remember that the whole thing with the target. This number might not be right. So it's going to be righter than just being like, screw it, I'm just not going to eat bread. But at the same time, multiple iterations might be necessary for him to make sure that the target is small and focused. So the next part of the pyramid is our I don't know how that works. My grammar's bad. Anyway, is macronutrients. Those macronutrients are protein, carbs, fat. Alcohol is also a macronutrient, but we're just not going to touch on that. If you want tips on how to drink and stay in shape, you can ask me. I know a lot about that. Protein, 4 calories per gram. Carbs, 4 calories per gram. Fat, 9 calories per gram. Basic math. And all these sum to, when you consume food, those sum up the total calories in the food. So big thing, of all the macronutrients, when it comes to prioritizing which one's the most important, protein is almost always important for body composition. And the reason is because when you're cutting, preserving lean body mass, when you're bulking, promoting lean body mass growth, and also it has all other advantages in keeping you satiated or full when you're cutting in a deficit. So general rule of thumb with protein is to consume around 1 gram per pound of body weight. And this number, when I do coaching or nutrition programming for people, I like to have that range pretty loose because mainly I like to base it on preference. Because some people, they prefer to consume a higher amount of protein. Other people prefer to consume a lower amount of protein. But bottom line, if you're around there, you should be okay. All of this is generally based on preference, and we like to make that the #1 priority. And then once you determine your protein, we actually like to use percentages to determine your fats as opposed to a hard and fast, what's it called, a hard and fast multiplier. Reason being because, actually I don't feel like getting into that. Just use a percentage when you want to determine your fat. So 20 to 35% of your calories should probably come from fat. This is mainly going to be based on preference. And then moving forward from there, you set the remainder of your calories to go to your carbohydrates. Now, if you're doing math in your head, you probably realize like, oh, okay, I am kind of suggesting a higher to moderate carb distribution. And the reason that I kind of like to suggest a higher carb recommendation is because more carbs give you more energy in the gym when you are training. But like I said, preference and adherence, those are the most important things. And also there are some cases where some people would probably be better off with low carbs. It usually happens about 20% of the time. I mean, it depends on who you ask. But things that would make it so someone is probably better off with lower carbs, or if they have low insulin sensitivity, if they're above the age of 40 to 50, and other situations, mainly preference, that would make it so lower carbs are the way to go. But I'll go ahead with an example, assuming the same guy is normal. For protein, easy math, 1 times 200 grams of protein for this fellow. Fats, he will be in the middle of that range, so 25% of his calories come from fat. All that math there puts him at 70 grams. Carbs, it just takes what's left. So we subtract the calories that he set for himself, the protein, the fat, and then we get 295 grams of carbs. And that math isn't exact, but personally I like to see numbers in, in units of fives, and my calories in units of hundreds, because it's pretty to look at. It just makes it easier. But, like I mentioned, what if all this crap we're doing doesn't work? So like, what if he sets these numbers, and he's been at it for 2 weeks, and he's gained 9 pounds instead of losing 9 pounds? So this dude's gonna be pissed off, he's gonna be like, what the hell, this doesn't work, I'm gonna quit. But if we stick those principles I said before, iterating to make our target smaller, we have a plan of attack to make sure that we do get to our target goal. And the way we do that is we track, we analyze, and adjust. So I'm guessing this is probably like a part of the presentation where people like don't really like have like an idea, like they haven't experienced this or like done something like this before. The other stuff I'm guessing you guys have, so I'll try and be a little bit more detailed on this. So the whole track, analyze, adjust thing, this is usually what people might want to pay a fitness coach for, a nutritionist, after trying a hack and doing those ballpark approximations and not seeing any progress. And for cutting, the hard way to do it is just doing it based on your deadline and lean body mass, and I'll go into detail on that on the whiteboard. And then for the easy way to do it for cutting is just doing it based on your deadline and shooting for about 1% body mass loss per week. So I could do this on whiteboard, but I actually have a chart that will show how this is done. So this is actually a slide from a deck we put together when we were actually pitching to Eric to be like, yo, join our team, you know what we're doing. So this is actually, we implement this in the algorithm, but let's see if I have a pen, yes. So your goal percent of weight loss is going to depend on your body type or the amount of body fat you're holding on to. Like I mentioned before, larger people, they hold on to more body fat, so they're going to be more able to lose body mass at a quicker rate than smaller people. And then if you have a shorter deadline, you're going to want to have your rate of body fat or body mass loss be quicker than if you have a longer deadline. So I'll post this chart too. I'm not actually writing anything on the board. So basically, you have a max rate and you have a minimum rate. And we determine the minimum rate by ballparking a number that's a percentage of that maximum rate. And we say that, okay, you are losing weight at a proper rate if you fall in between those two numbers. So you can form a nice, pretty little matrix out of all this and make it look good so you can see where you fall in between every week. But yeah, that's how that works. So for someone that would be cutting, what they do is they track their nutrition every week. They track their average weight every week, and they look to make sure that they fall in between that range, and then make adjustments if they weren't. So that's what it is for cutting. And now for bulking, it's about the same thing, except the rate is based on training experience. And the easy way of bulking and making sure that you're doing it right, just make sure you don't get fat as shit. So really the rate that we look for most people is about 1 to 3 pounds per month. If you're a more experienced trainee, you fall in that advanced category, then the rate will probably be about half a pound to a pound. But if you're a novice trainee, then training is a new stimulus to you.